Welcome to the presentation of the A team at the intersection of customer service and patron privacy. This group is made up of Rebecca Budinger-Mulhern from the Avon Free Library, Alicia Gunther from the Rochester Public Library, and Melissa McHenry from the Gates Public Library. The project background. On the front lines of library customer service, we are often confronted with having to decide between providing good customer service or protecting patron privacy.
Our group explored this challenge by surveying local libraries about their patron privacy policies, exploring the repercussions of acting on one or the other, and researching how to improve communication to our patrons, the importance of patron privacy.
At the end of this presentation, we will provide the library professionals with tools for navigating the often conflicting nature of these aspects of service and help library staff to improve the communication of patron privacy to patrons to enhance customer services. I'll start us off with privacy versus confidentiality. And who doesn't like to start off with definitions? As you can see, privacy is the state of freedom from unauthorized intrusion. And confidentiality is the state of being kept private or secret and kept from knowledge, kept from view. I think with privacy, there's always that element that of judgment or somebody else putting their own part into it. Privacy breach is actually a misnomer because it's really a confidentiality breach when you're talking about a person's credit card number, social security number, and address or information like that. Privacy and confidentiality are two things that libraries as institutions should place a high value on for the sake of our patrons. In America, we put a lot of value on life and liberty. We get to think what we want, we get to express what we want, we get to hang out if we want. I think this list gives a nice difference between privacy and confidentiality and how it reflects upon different aspects of the library. The concept area of limiting the access to the public is pretty important in libraries, and it's something that really is a concept. We can definitely believe and do our best with privacy, but unless we have a self-checkout, at least one person is going to see the title of the book or DVD or whatever item a patron is checking out. But then if we jump over to confidentiality, we can see that we have to keep things confidential. Once that checkout has become a transaction and it's recorded on a person's, a patron record, it's up to us to keep that information confidential. I think on this slide, the most important thing to look at, to remember the difference between privacy and confidentiality, is privacy deals with the individual, confidentiality deals with the information. ALA has a lot to say about confidentiality, which is probably not at all surprising. But if you go through their website, you'll find a lot of great information and a lot of really good resources that can help you figure out what your library needs, where they need to be in relationship to privacy and confidentiality. And probably out of this big, huge, long thing, the most important part is to remember that confidentiality is your library's responsibility. We don't want the information out there. We don't want addresses, you don't want titles, you don't want anything that can be led back to a person's identification. As I said, privacy and confidentiality are definitely library core values. ALA feels very strongly that it's essential to America, our exercise of free speech, our free thought, and our free association. And libraries are the people that are protecting that, and we are the people standing up for that and promoting that. So when we're talking about that, we have to balance it, as said in our title, with customer service. You know, we may have a patron that comes in and we consider them a friend. We talk about books all the time. We recommend books, chat about the weather, chat about vacations. But then if that patron comes in with a stack of books on how to get divorced in New York State, what are we going to do? How are we going to handle that? And if we have a young person come in with a book on being transgender, are we going to make any comment? Because something that personal, and again, something private, will always have that connotation of somebody making a judgment, even if it's just a perceived negative judgment. And that can really do a lot of damage to the library and our trust within our walls with our patrons. And here's some more wise words from ALA, who have gone as far to develop a code of ethics and a library bill of rights, which I'm sure many of you are very familiar with. And a lot of libraries do have these posted and do have this information ready to fall back on when necessary. And I just wanted to bring up kind of a situation that came of the pandemic. While we're talking about privacy and confidentiality, we were communicating within our library, our staff, on Slack. And at one point, somebody had said that they would like to contact a couple of our elderly patrons and just check in and make sure they were okay. So then somebody posted somebody's phone number. So then somebody got in trouble. But it turned out a few weeks later, while I was on Facebook, my own personal Facebook, that I saw some friends from another library, and their boss was saying, you know what, go ahead, contact these people. Obviously, they weren't handing out phone numbers right and left, but they said, go ahead, this is never happened before. This is important. If you think it's important to make contact with your patrons, go ahead and do it. And the person reported back and they said that the patron was so grateful to hear from them. And they were so thrilled to hear from the library. So again, nothing's written in stone, but these are the things we aspire to. And hopefully when things get a little bit more back to normal, we can focus on them, and we'll give you some tools to do a good job with it.
Okay, so based on the information that Melissa just shared about privacy and confidentiality, we decided to do some research with some of our local libraries, public, academic, and school libraries, to see what kind of information each of those libraries have regarding their patron privacy policies. And this first slide focuses on public awareness, where we looked at 62 library websites to see if we could find a posted patron privacy policy on their website. Because it's one thing to have a patron privacy policy, and it's another thing to make sure that that's available so that the patrons know that that policy is actually out there and they can understand what the policies are of the library. And a lot of times these days, people are going directly to the website to find this information. So, out of the 62 websites that we looked at, 40 of them did not have a patron privacy policy listed on their website. So it's very likely that the patrons that go to those websites have no idea what the patron privacy policies are. Of the remaining libraries, 2 of them had the ALA patron privacy statement or government law posted to their website, listed as their patron privacy policy. And then the everybody else had some sort of patron privacy policy on their website, either as its own independent, fully developed policy, which expands on the ALA statement or government law, or they had a patron privacy policy intermixed within one of their other policies. Most frequently, it was within their circulation policy. There was a section that talked about patron privacy. We also surveyed a number of public, academic, and school libraries about their patron privacy policies. So we got feedback directly from library directors or librarians regarding their patron privacy policies that they have. Because even though they may not have it listed on their website, a lot of libraries have patron privacy policies. They just weren't easily accessible to us without going to the library and saying, hey, can you please give me or send me your patron privacy policy? So we used SurveyMonkey to survey libraries to see what kind of information we could get from them. Okay, one of the first questions we asked was, does your library have a patron privacy policy? Most public libraries do. And then what we found with a lot of the academic and school libraries was that their patron privacy policies are based on whatever the policies are set by the school. So out of those results, 24, we had 38 people respond to the survey. Out of that 38, 24 said that they do have a privacy policy, 14 said that they do not. The next question we asked was, how often are those policies reviewed or updated? And some of the most popular responses were that they've been reviewed within the last 1 to 2 years, or they are currently being updated. 17% said that they're reviewed every 3 to 5 years. 17% said that they're reviewed 5 or more every 5 or more years. 14% said they were as needed, and then 21% said that their patron privacy policies are just a restatement of either the ALA statement or a government law, which we will look at the next slide. And that's basically, so their policy, they don't really review it because it's just something that's already established that they are sharing from either ALA or the state. So when the state decides to update that statement, that's when theirs would be updated. And this is an example, or basically what that state law that I was referencing to in the previous slide, and what the ALA statement is that you will typically find when those libraries say that they are using the ALA statement or the state New York State law. These are those two documents that we are referencing to, that some libraries, they just take those and they put them on their library's website, and that's what they use as their patron privacy statement, which is fine. It's just it's the most generic statement that some of the libraries are using. So this question was an interesting question that we had from the survey. There isn't really a right or wrong answer to this one. This was more of a let's think about it question. And it was interesting to get a lot of the comments from this was, which takes, in your library, which takes top priority? And they had, people who took the survey had to choose from customer service or patron privacy. And as you can see in the results, 20 people said it was patron or customer service, and 12 responded that it was patron privacy. Out of these results, though, we did get a lot of comments on this question that talked about patron privacy and customer service and how those two things are really more of a connected concept. They're really not their own separate values, which is, it makes a lot of sense. A lot of the comments were about the fact that patron privacy is an aspect of customer service, or they are equally valued. And that, but also a lot of the comments noted that patron privacy should never be compromised in order to meet customer service. So that's where we talk a lot about in this presentation about meeting that balance of providing good customer service while at the same time maintaining patron privacy. And a lot of and awareness can help with that, because if a patron understands what their patron privacy is, then when they come in and look for certain aspects of like their spouse's account or what their child is checking out, if they understand patron privacy, we don't run into that conflict of customer service as much because they understand the patron privacy policies. And that's something to think about when we talk about why it's important to not only have a patron privacy policy, but to also make sure patrons are aware of that policy, which goes back to the first part of the survey where we looked at those 62 library websites to see if we could find their patron privacy policy. If they can't see it and they don't know what it is, there's a greater risk for there to be a conflict in customer service because they get upset and they don't understand why we can't give them that information. The final question in our survey looked at what are some of the challenges that you face in regards to keeping your patrons' information confidential. And these 5 words on this slide indicate the most popular or most frequently referenced challenges that people face. Out of all of the survey's responses, 13 referred to challenges from other family members, so the spouse or the parent coming in and looking for records on either, again, their spouse or their child. Next one was natural library layout. So the people talking loudly at the reference desk or at the circulation desk, and the way the library is laid out so that people can hear what the conversation that may be happening at a reference desk or a circulation desk, which is something I found really interesting. Because we talk about a lot in libraries about the open space and the openness of libraries and making the library spaces very welcoming. And it's one of those challenges where it's hard to balance. If you have a patron who's naturally louder and you're in a very open library, those transactions that can happen at the circulation desk or the reference desk can be easily overheard by other people in the library. Training, so staff awareness of patron policy or patron privacy policy was another one. Patrons understanding technology privacy, and of course general patron education of understanding their own privacy, be it through technology or in person, their records. Some of the other things that came up were law enforcement. So law enforcement coming in and looking for records from a patron without the proper paperwork, patron and staff talking about others, that customer service and patron policy balance. Tracking items was another challenge that came up, and explaining the code of ethics was another topic that came up quite frequently in our survey. So those were some of the results of our survey, and we will pass it over to Rebecca now.
Thank you. Now we're going to talk about bringing it together, customer service and patron privacy and confidentiality. Yeah, I had problems with that word too. Customer service and patron privacy and confidentiality. Practical application of patron privacy can be difficult when combined with a customer service challenge. We'll discuss how preparation, communication, and education are the puzzle pieces needed to make this work. So on this slide are some of the tools that you can use to establish your patron privacy policies, to support your staff in understanding them for training, even to share with patrons to support your reasons for making decisions in the interest of patron privacy. So some of these have already been discussed by Alicia and Melissa, but specifically the American Library Association is a wealth of information and resources. Their website is a must visit for library administrators. So especially the Code of Ethics, with the link here. I'm sure you've read it. It may even be part of your current policies and even your personnel handbook, if it's not a specific separate privacy policy. The ALA also has available on their website a privacy toolkit, a whole toolkit of documents and resources supporting libraries in their mission of protecting patron privacy. And then also they have available a policy manual. So not just policies on privacy, but policies on many subjects that libraries need. So it is an excellent resource for culling and finding policies that you can borrow. Because if you look to the next section here, strong library policies don't reinvent the wheel. Don't reinvent the wheel by rewriting an entire policy. There are so many good policies out there that we all expect that if it's good, someone may steal it, borrow the language. And maybe you'll look at multiple policies on a topic and pull them together and find that you felt one was missing an angle, so you pulled something from another piece to create your privacy policy. That's a totally legitimate use of policies. So besides the ALA policy manual, other resources for finding policies are library systems. Specifically in this slide, I highlighted the North Country Library System and the Pioneer Library System, but check your own library system and see what policies are available. And specifically other libraries' policies. You will find that certain libraries have excellent policies. Maybe they had a library director who just loved policies and they wrote some really tight policies and they post them on their website, which we all will have to do, for minimum standards very soon. But specifically, the NYLA Public Library, I put a link into their confidentiality of records policy. I thought it was clear and strong. Also, the Fairport Public Library confidentiality of records policy. There's a link there. I didn't put the link in here. The Rochester Public Library has a very interesting policy about confidentiality of records for youth and at what age a youth is considered autonomous. And I want to say it's 6th grade. Now, the library I'm in is currently 18 years old, and I find that to be a little old. Upon adulthood, they then have the authority to protect their privacy, their confidentiality of records from, say, a parent. But the challenge with at what age is a person accountable and in control of their own confidentiality of records has a lot to do with who pays the bill if their items don't come back. And if your library says until the age of 18, and a parent or guardian is responsible for paying fines for lost or late items, then there is a conception that the parent has the right to know what items they're paying for. And so that's a challenge. That's a difficulty of patron privacy versus customer service. So have a clear policy, train your staff on how to use the policy and to stand up for the patron whose privacy is being challenged or confidentiality of records are being challenged. And interestingly, this was not part of our original proposal for this project, but it seemed that if we didn't include a slide on this topic, we would be remiss to consider what our current pandemic situation has brought to our attention in the arena of patron privacy. So here's an epilogue, the patron privacy in the time of COVID-19. We are all looking at reopening our libraries right now, at least public libraries, school and university libraries will be looking at opening their libraries in the fall. But there are things that we have to consider as a public library. One of the things that's being asked of us in the New York Forward reopening paperwork is to do contact tracing. So we are asked to keep a list of people who come and go from the library to a degree. All staff must be written down. Any workers, like outside contractors who work in the library, spend time in the library, will be written down. Delivery people do not need to be recorded if they're wearing the proper PPE, personal protective equipment. And then you get to patrons. So patrons can voluntarily leave their name and phone number and be added to that list. The idea being that should it come out that there was someone in your library who tested positive for COVID-19, and they happened to be in your library on a certain date, you could then share with the health department the names of people who you knew had been in the library on that day and may have had contact with that person. It is part of the contact tracing procedure to contain the virus. So the way that you have to do it and the way that you manage that with patron privacy is that the patron side of that is voluntary. If someone says, I don't want it recorded that I was here and on what day, then they don't have to participate. So also we have tracking patron traffic, and that's part of that patron privacy of the contact tracing, paying attention to who's going where. Again, it's voluntary. Staff and patron conversations. So we've been away from our patrons for at least 2 months now. We're looking at probably 3 months. Some of us have made those phone calls that Melissa talked about earlier. When I talked to staff about making those patron touch phone calls, I made it very clear that we cannot have personal conversations, that we cannot elicit personal conversations. We cannot ask, has everyone been healthy? Don't ask about their healthcare situation. Just check in and say, we're just saying hi, letting you know that we miss you. It may be that patron may go to more personal information, but if they do that, that's on their part of the conversation, not on yours. I anticipate that when we're at the desk again and we're seeing people for the first time, it will be a challenge to sometimes stay on appropriate topics and not discuss, oh, this person was sick and did you hear this and did you, it's a small town where I work and we often develop these relationships with patrons. So that will be part of the training. That will be something that I'll be thinking about with the staff. And just generally the library's role in public health. We have, except for maybe forwarding a Facebook post about, healthy eating or washing your hands, we haven't really been truly part of the public health machine. And I think we are seeing at this point that we will be. All the precautions that we'll be taking in quarantining our returning materials, disinfecting bathrooms, cleaning computers, putting time between the next person who can use the computer. We are working in the interest of the public health, and as presented in some of the above bullet points, sometimes that comes in conflict with patron privacy. So we just have to do it smartly. We have to do it with a plan, and follow our plans and train our staff to our plans, and we will all get through this. So one of the tools that I would like to share with folks is the Pioneer Library Systems Reopening Toolkit, and especially and specifically the Employee Health Screening Policy and Contact Tracing Policy. So talked a little bit about the contact tracing, but the Employee Health Screening Policy is before every shift an employee has to contact the director, either via phone, text, or email, and attest to the point that they have been fever-free, they have not been knowingly been in contact with anyone who's tested positive, and that they have not had a positive test. It doesn't mean that they have to have a test. It just means that they have to attest that they have not tested positive. If they haven't had a reason to have a test, then that's part of their reporting. So, you could say that is that an invasion of the privacy of the employee? We've never been in a situation where some libraries might be taking people's temperatures, either of the patrons or of the employees. That is a new realm for us. So making sure that you have the proper policies in place to support what your library chooses to do, work with your board, work with your health department, work with your library system to get those in place so that you are protected and prepared for whatever this pandemic brings to us as we start to get back into things, and being prepared to potentially close again and have to do this over if there's another peak. So that is our epilogue. That is the end of our presentation. We're sorry that we couldn't do this live with our friends in the class and share their thoughts and their questions and have a good conversation around it. So thank you for your time. Thank you for watching our presentation, and stay healthy, everyone.
Thank you.